The wind carried a sourness that didn't belong in the freshly turned soil. Sheriff Daniel Carrick squinted against the sun, his canine straining at the leash, whining at the far corner of the Whitaker field. Nobody paid attention. Dogs barked, dogs dig, dogs smell things that aren't there. But Daniels got twisted at the sound. Ranger's growl wasn't random. It was focused, primal. And when the farmer's rusted plow caught on something buried deep, the clatter of steel against bone silenced the men around him. The earth had given up a secret, and it had teeth. The field behind the Whitaker farm stretched like a tired quilt, patched with uneven crops and stubborn weeds. The late summer heat pressed down, trapping the smell of manure and gasoline from a farmer's tractor. Sheriff Carrick had been called out that morning to deal with trespassing kids who, according to the farmer, had been sneaking onto the property at night. "Sheriff, it's just a bunch of teenagers. They don't respect land that isn't theirs," said Tom Whitaker, his cap pulled low over his weathered face. His voice cracked with years of tobacco and hard work. Daniel nodded, though his eyes weren't on Tom. Ranger was restless. The German shepherd's ears flicked toward the far fence line, body tense, pulling against a leather lead. "Ranger's distracted today," Daniel muttered. He tugged the leash. "Heel!" The dog whined but didn't obey. His nose pressed the dirt, tail stiff. Tom chuckled. "Dogs and their ghosts. My father used to say they see what we can't." Daniel's jaw clenched. He didn't like talk of ghosts, not out here, not when silence hung heavier than it should, as though the field itself was holding its breath. "Let's walk the perimeter," Daniel said, more to settle his nerves than because it was needed. The kids were probably long gone. They circled the field, Daniel making notes, Tom rattling on about vandals, until the tractor sputtered and caught on something solid underground. The blade screeched, sparks kissing the dry air. "Damn rock," Tom muttered. He hopped down from the tractor with the energy of a man 20 years younger. Daniel followed, Ranger already straining ahead. Together they dug at the soil with gloved hands, expecting stone or rusted scrap. But then the dirt fell away, revealing something pale. Not stone, not metal, bone. Daniel froze. His breath caught sharp in his throat. A rib cage, curved and fragile, half exposed in the torn earth. Tom's hand trembled as he backed up, spitting curses. Jesus Christ. Ranger barked, a low, guttural sound that didn't feel like warning. It felt like mourning. They cordoned off the field. Deputies rolled in with tape and shovels. The coroner's van arrived slow, like even it didn't want to be here. News would spread quick in a town this small. Bones in Whitaker's field would fuel gossip for years. Daniel stood over the open grave as the sun dropped behind the hills, painting the dirt red. The body wasn't whole. Scattered bones tangled in roots. A skull cracked in two like brittle porcelain. Deputy Cole Simmons, fresh-faced, still too young to wear the uniform, hovered at Daniel's side. "Think it's old?" "Like pioneer old." Daniel shook his head. The bones weren't weathered enough. The soil still clung to them like flesh that had only just let go. "Recent," he said. Cole swallowed hard. "So, murder?" Daniel didn't answer. Night crept over the farmland. Cicadas screamed from the trees. The excavation lights buzzed with moths. Ranger sat at the edge of the tape, ears pricked, eyes locked on the hole. He hadn't moved for hours. Tom Whitaker stood a few yards away, arms crossed tight. His face was stone, but his eyes betrayed something darker, fear, maybe guilt. Daniel approached. "Tom, I need a list of everyone who's worked this land the last 20 years. Laborers, drifters, anyone." Tom gave a hollow laugh. "Sheriff, this farm's been in my family for 4 generations. Outsiders don't last here. Hell, even family doesn't." Daniel studied him. The man's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. "What do you mean by that?" Tom looked away, toward the barn silhouetted against the horizon. "Just dig careful, Sheriff. Sometimes the past don't stay buried because it wants to." Daniel didn't press. "Not yet." At midnight, the last of the deputies packed up. The bones were taken, bagged, labeled. The hole remained, yawning open in the dirt like a wound. Daniel lingered. Ranger still hadn't moved, nose pointed at the field's far edge. Daniel followed his gaze. Nothing but dark rows of corn swaying in the night breeze. Still, unease crawled up his spine. He crouched beside his dog. "What is it, boy?" Ranger whined, pawing the ground. That's when Daniel noticed something half buried where the plow hadn't touched. A flash of red fabric in the dirt. He brushed it clean. A child's shoe. Mud-caked, faded. Daniel's chest tightened. He held it in his palm. Staring, memories stirred. Faces from old missing posters, unanswered calls from grieving families. This wasn't just one body. The next morning, the town was already buzzing. At the diner, whispers swirled like cigarette smoke. Everyone had theories. Drifters. Old enemies. A family feud. Daniel sat at the counter, coffee gone cold in his hands. Across from him, Pastor Harlan leaned forward, his voice low. "You open graves. You let out more than bones," the pastor said, his eyes sharp beneath his soft words. "This town forgets by burying. Don't forget that." Daniel stared at him, unsettled. "Pastor, what do you know?" Harlan just smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said he'd already said too much. Back at the station, the coroner confirmed Daniel's fears. "Female," Dr. Leary said, pulling down her mask. "Mid to late teens, based on growth plates and dentition. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the skull. It was deliberate, Sheriff. No accident." Daniel's throat went dry. "Any ID?" Leary shook her head. "Too degraded, but not more than 15 years in the ground. Maybe 10. Daniel closed his eyes. 10 years ago, that would have been the disappearance of Sarah Whitmore, Tom's niece. Vanished one night, never found. The shoe burned in his memory. That evening, Daniel drove back to the Whitaker farm. The sky bled orange, the corn whispering in the wind. Tom was waiting on the porch, shotgun across his lap. "You knew," Daniel said, stepping out of his cruiser. Tom's eyes flicked up, weary and hard. "Knew what?" "That there were bones in that field. That girl didn't wander off. She was put there." Tom's grip tightened on the shotgun, but his voice stayed calm. "Careful, Sheriff. You're standing on ground older than you. You think you want the truth, but the truth will rot you faster than any corpse." Daniel's pulse hammered. He didn't trust Tom. Didn't trust his calm, his words, his silence. But what chilled him more was Ranger, still staring at that same corner of the field, low growl rumbling in his chest. The dog hadn't been wrong. And Daniel feared he wasn't finished yet. If you made it this far into the story and you want to keep following Ranger's trail with me, stay with this channel. It helps me keep telling these stories the way they deserve to be told. The morning broke gray and heavy, a sky the color of ash pressing down on Whitaker's farm. Sheriff Daniel Carrick sat in his cruiser at the edge of the field, the engine idling low. Ranger lay in the back seat, alert but silent, eyes locked in the corn rows like he could see through them. Daniel had slept maybe 2 hours. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the child's shoe in his hand, felt the cold of those bones brushing through his gloves. He'd been a cop long enough to know the signs. This was no accident, no forgotten burial. Somebody had put her in the dirt and expected time to finish the work. Time hadn't. The dog hadn't. Daniel killed the engine and stepped into the damp morning. His boots sank into soft earth. The field was quiet now, stripped of the hum of tractors and chatter of deputies. Just the wind, threading through corn and fences. Tom Whitaker came down off the porch, moving slow. He looked older than yesterday, though the night had been short for them both. His shotgun was absent this morning, but Daniel didn't take that as a sign of peace. Men like Tom didn't need a weapon in hand to be dangerous. "You back awful early, Sheriff," Tom said, voice graveled. "Sun ain't even warmed the ground." Daniel nodded once. "Early is when you see things honest, before people get to rehearsing their lies." Tom's eyes narrowed. "You accusing me of something?" Daniel didn't answer. He walked past, heading for the spot where the plow had struck bone. Ranger padded close at his heel now, silent but watchful. The earth still gaped open, a raw wound in the soil. The excavation crews had left it exposed overnight. Too much to catalog in one day. Daniel crouched at the edge, scanning the churned soil. He found the outline of another bone fragment the deputies had missed. Small, delicate. Fingers, maybe. Tom's boots crunched on gravel behind him. "You stirring up trouble, Sheriff. This town don't take kindly to its dead being dragged into daylight." Daniel stood slowly, brushing dirt from his hands. "That girl didn't just vanish, Tom. You and I both know it. And now she's in your field." For a long moment, Tom said nothing. His jaw worked. His hands flexed at his sides. Finally, he spat into the dirt. "Family tears itself apart just fine without the law's help," he muttered, turning back toward the house. By afternoon, the sheriff's office was crowded with voices. Missing posters, cold cases, rumors, all piled up on Daniel's desk. Cole Simmons sat across from him, nervously shuffling papers. "Sheriff, we got 6 unsolved disappearances in the last 15 years. 3 women, 2 kids, 1 drifter." He slid the file forward, his face pale. "And every damn one of them vanished within 10 miles of Whitaker's farm." Daniel leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Any ties between them?" "Not direct. Except," Cole hesitated. "Except what?" Cole pushed another folder across. A faded photo clipped to the front showed a smiling teenage girl, her hair loose, her eyes sharp with mischief. Sarah Whitmore, Tom's niece. Vanished summer of 2012. Last seen leaving the church picnic. Cole swallowed. Witnesses say she was fighting with her uncle earlier that day. Daniel studied the photo, his gut twisting. The shoe, the skull. It lined up too well. He closed the folder and looked at Cole. "Don't breathe a word of this yet. Not until we know for sure." Cole nodded, but unease lingered in his eyes. "Sheriff, what if the whole town already knows and just doesn't talk?" That night, Daniel drove out to the old records office. Dust coated everything, files stacked like tombstones. He searched through deeds, property disputes, family histories. The Whitaker name was everywhere: land, loans, lawsuits. At the back of one ledger, he found a faded note. July 18th, 2012. Dispute between Thomas Whitaker and Reverend Harlan regarding custody of Sarah Whitmore after the death of her parents. Daniel froze. The pastor. His mind replayed the conversation from the diner. "You open graves. You let out more than bones." Maybe Harlan hadn't been speaking in riddles. Maybe he'd been speaking from memory. The church sat quiet at midnight, a single bulb glowing above the door. Daniel pushed the door open. The old would groan like a confession. Ranger followed, nails clicking on the floorboards. Inside, the air smelled of candle wax and mildew. Pastor Harlan knelt at the altar, whispering a prayer. He didn't look surprised when Daniel's boots echoed up the aisle. "You should be home, Sheriff," Harlan said softly. "That field isn't done with you yet." Daniel's voice was low, firm. "Tell me about Sarah." Harlan's shoulders stiffened. Slowly, he turned, his lined face shadowed by the low light. She was a wild one, full of anger she didn't earn, carrying the sins of others. "Others like Tom?" Harlan's lips pressed tight. "Tom wanted her gone. Said she brought shame to the family. I told him she was God's child, not his possession." Daniel's fists curled. "Did you see what happened?" Harlan's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "I saw him drag her toward that field. I saw her screaming, but I wasn't strong enough to stop it. My silence buried her as deep as the soil." Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. He wanted to strike the man, drag him out in cuffs, but part of him knew, without proof, Harlan's words were just another layer of rot. "Why didn't you speak?" Daniel demanded. Harlan's gaze dropped. "Because in this town, truth gets you buried too." When Daniel stepped back into the night, the wind carried the faintest sound, Ranger growling low and steady. The dog's gaze was fixed on the side of the church, where a pile of old boards leaned against the wall. Daniel pulled them aside, heart pounding. Underneath, buried shallow in the dirt, he found another scrap of fabric, this one larger. A faded dress, tattered but unmistakably feminine. He held it up to the moonlight. Another piece of Sarah. Back at the station, Daniel laid the dress on his desk, staring at it until dawn. He couldn't shake Harlan's words. Truth gets you buried too. By morning, The phone lines were alive. Reporters wanted statements. Families of the missing wanted answers. The county wanted updates. Tom Whitaker arrived unannounced, stepping into the office with his hat in his hands. His face was drawn, his voice quieter than Daniel had ever heard. "You think I killed her," Tom said. Daniel met his eyes but said nothing. Tom's hands trembled. "Sarah was trouble, Sheriff. She stole. She lied. She cut deep with her tongue. But she was blood. I never laid a hand on her." "Then why did Harlan see you drag her into that field?" Tom's face darkened. "Because that old bastard lies to keep his own secrets buried. You think I'm the monster? Look harder." Daniel studied him, searching for cracks. Tom looked broken, yes, but guilty? The line blurred. Before Daniel could press further, Ranger barked, a sharp, urgent sound from his place near the office door. He pawed at the floor, nails scraping. Daniel's eyes followed the dog's focus. A dark stain spread faintly beneath the floorboards, old but distinct. Blood. They pried the boards up that afternoon. The room filled with the smell of rust and decay. Underneath the station floor, buried shallow as if hidden in panic, lay another set of bones. Smaller this time. A child. Cole staggered back, pale as chalk. Jesus Christ. Here? In the station? Daniel's pulse thundered. Whoever put these here wanted them close. Wanted to remind the law who held the power. Tom stared at the discovery, his face twisted with horror. "You see now, Sheriff? Evil ain't on my farm. It's in your house." Daniel's breath came shallow. The dog had led him here, past the lies, past the fear. But each bone uncovered pulled the noose tighter around the town's neck. And Daniel knew one thing with brutal clarity. The Whitaker field was just the beginning. If you've stayed with the story this far, your support keeps it alive. Thank you for following Ranger's trail into the dark. Stay close, because the worst hasn't been unearthed yet. The sheriff's office stank of rot long after the bones were pulled from beneath the floor. Deputies had worked all night, masks over their faces, hauling evidence boxes under the sick glow of fluorescent bulbs. By dawn, the station felt less like a seat of law and more like a mausoleum. Sheriff Daniel Carrick stood at the window, jaw tight, watching the sunrise break across the sleepy town. His reflection in the glass looked hollow-eyed, hair unkempt, skin drawn tight as wire. Ranger sat at his side, tail still, body rigid. The dog hadn't relaxed since the first body was uncovered. Behind him, Cole Simmons flipped through files, his voice shaky. "Sheriff, what if someone planted those bones here to throw us off? I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it? A body under the station?" Daniel turned, his voice sharp. "It makes perfect sense. Whoever's behind this wants us to know he owns us. He doesn't fear the law. He buries it beneath our feet." Cole swallowed hard, but his eyes darted away, uneasy, guilty almost. Daniel filed the look away in his mind. By mid-morning, the county coroner confirmed the second horror. The bones under the station belonged to a boy no older than 8. Unidentified. Daniel walked into the evidence room, the air thick with dust. He studied the collected scraps, Sarah's shoe, her torn dress, fragment of teeth, and now the child's remains. Together, they painted a picture too grim to dismiss. This wasn't one death. It was a string of disappearances stretching back years, maybe decades. And every path still led to Whitaker's farm. That evening, Daniel returned to the field, Ranger bounding out ahead. The dog's nose pressed low to ground, his growls deep and steady. Daniel followed him to the far edge of the corn, where the fence sagged inward. Ranger began digging furiously, dirt flying in sprays behind him. Daniel crouched, flashlight in hand. The beam cut across the soil, revealing something metallic glinting beneath the surface. He brushed it clean. A belt buckle, tarnished but etched with initials. Jam. His stomach twisted. Jonah Marks, a deputy who'd vanished 10 years ago, written off as a runaway drunk. Daniel sat back hard, the weight of realization crushing him. These weren't random killings. Someone had been feeding the field, year after year, body after body, and someone had been covering for them. He drove straight to Tom Whitaker's house, slamming the cruiser door. Tom was already waiting on the porch, as if he knew. "Sheriff," Tom drawled, voice heavy. "You keep sniffing. You'll dig yourself a grave, too." Daniel stormed up the steps, fist clenched around the buckle. "You explain this, Tom." "Jonah Marks. Your farm swallowed him, too." Tom's face flickered with something. Fear, rage, grief, all tangled. Jonah wasn't killed here. He was buried here. Big difference. Daniel's jaw locked. "What the hell does that mean?" Tom leaned close, voice low. "It means you're barking up the wrong tree. The Whitakers bury the bodies. We don't make them." The words hit like a fist. Daniel stared, bile rising in his throat. "You're telling me someone else kills them, and you, what? Hide the evidence." Tom's silence was answer enough. That night, Daniel sat alone in his cruiser, hands trembling on the wheel. His whole life, he believed in the line between good men and bad. But Whitaker had blurred it, forced him to ask if hiding the dead was worse than killing them. Ranger shifted in the back seat, whining. His ears twitched, nose pressed against the glass. Daniel followed the dog's stare toward the church. The church was dark, but Daniel forced the doors open. The smell hit him immediately, iron and rot. Ranger pulled him down the aisle, barking now, claws scraping against the wood. Behind the altar, a trapdoor gaped open. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears as he descended the narrow steps into the earth. The basement was damp, walls lined with jars of preserved fruit, sacks of grain. But in the far corner, beneath a canvas tarp, lay more bones, piles of them, children, women, men. And standing in the shadows was Pastor Harlan. "You weren't supposed to see this," Harlan said softly, stepping forward. His hands shook, his face hollow. Daniel's voice was ice. "You, all this time." Harlan's eyes glistened with a terrible peace. "The town brought them to me, their sins, their shames. They begged me to take the burden, to keep the families whole, the fields pure. I was their shepherd, and the Whitakers, they till the earth over my flock." Daniel felt sick. "You're no shepherd. You're a butcher." Harlan's smile was faint, broken, and yet they come to my sermons. They sing my hymns. They pass their plates, because it's easier to pray than to confess. Daniel raised his gun, fury burning hot. But Ranger barked, a frantic, desperate sound, and Daniel froze. Because behind him, he heard the click of another gun's hammer. "Put it down, Sheriff." Cole's voice. Daniel turned slowly, heart splintering. Cole stood in the stairwell, his service weapon aimed steady, eyes full of shame. "Cole," Daniel said quietly. "Not you. Please, not you." Cole's hands shook, but his aim did not. "My sister was one of them. 10 years back. She disappeared. And my daddy made me swear never to tell. Said the church would handle it. Said Sheriff Marks wouldn't protect us anyway. So I kept quiet. I joined up. I tried to do good. But the bones don't let you sleep, Sheriff. They never do." Daniel's throat closed. Betrayal cut deep in the gun in his face. "You buried the truth." Cole's eyes brimmed. "We all did." Behind him, Harlan whispered, almost tender. "Let it lie, Sheriff. Lay down the dog. Walk away." Daniel's mind raced. One move wrong, and he'd end up another pile of bones beneath the church. He glanced at Ranger. The dog stood rigid, hackles raised, teeth bared. Then Daniel took a breath, lowered his gun. Slow, deliberate. Cole exhaled, relief flickering across his face. That was all Ranger needed. With a guttural snarl, the K-9 lunged. Cole stumbled, gun firing wild. The bullet cracked stone. Ranger sank teeth into Cole's arm, dragging him down. Daniel surged forward, boot striking the gun away, fist driving into Cole's jaw. Harlan shrieked, scrambling toward the bones, as if to protect them. Daniel spun, leveling his pistol. "Enough!" His voice thundered, shaking the stone. Harlan froze, eyes wide, breath ragged. Daniel's hands shook, but he didn't lower the gun. He wanted to shoot, to end it here. But Ranger whined, pressing close, his warmth grounding Daniel to the earth. Slowly, Daniel cuffed them both. By dawn, the basement was crawling with deputies. Evidence bags filled with bones, clothes, relics of the lost. Harlan and Cole sat in separate cruisers, faces pale, eyes empty. The whole town would know soon. But for Daniel, there was no victory, only silence. Tom Whitaker arrived as the bodies were hauled out. He stood beside Daniel, staring at the church with haunted eyes. "You see, Sheriff? Told you the field wasn't the root. We just covered the sins this town didn't want seen." Daniel's voice was low, broken. "And that makes you innocent?" Tom didn't answer. His silence was louder than confession. The sun rose blood-red over the town. Daniel sat on the steps of the church, Ranger's head heavy in his lap. The dog sighed, finally at rest, though his eyes stayed open, watchful. Daniel stroked his fur, voice barely a whisper. "You never let it go, did you? You knew it wasn't finished. You knew." The dog nuzzled closer, warm against the chill. And for the first time in days, Daniel let his shoulders fall. The town would never be clean, the earth never free of its dead. But for now, Ranger had pulled him back from the edge. And that was enough. If this story stayed with you, if you felt the weight of Ranger's trail through the silence of that field, stay close. Your presence here matters more than you think.